Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Jennifer SIEBEL Newsom, filmmaker, first partner of California, mother of 4 children, and co-founder of the California Partners Project. When I became first partner, I did 2 things. First, I changed the title of First Lady to First Partner. I wanted to expand what's possible for folks in this role to underscore the value of partnership and deconstruct gender for whomever comes next. Second, I co-founded the California Partners Project to complement our work out of the governor's and the first partner's office through strategic partnerships focused on gender equity and the impact of our state's powerful media and tech industries on our children's well-being. And when I saw an early version of the social dilemma, I knew it was a conversation that we needed to be having as parents, as teens, and as a state. With the pandemic we're all now facing, the relevancy of this film is more apparent than ever. And as both a parent of 4 young children under the age of 11 and first partner of California, I care deeply about the tech industry's impact on our children and the special responsibility that California platform makers have to address any harm, unintended or not, that social media and devices have on our adolescents' health and well-being. And I'm so glad to be here with all of you today with the California Partners Project and with my dear friend Lisa Ling for this crucial conversation. Lisa, by the way, is such a trooper. She's joining us from a hotel room in quarantine out of state due to a crew member testing for COVID. So with that, let's learn a little bit about this incredible moderator for this discussion. Lisa Ling is an Emmy-winning journalist, the author, a CNN host, a passionate member of the board of the California Partners Project, and most importantly, the mother of 2 young girls. Lisa often talks about and has produced multiple explorations on the implications of our children walking around with what is essentially supercomputers at their fingertips. And so today, Lisa will talk with the real experts, teens who have grown up as our tech natives, who regularly use social media. And I'm looking forward to hearing from these teens about what stood out to them about the social dilemma and what they learned from watching the film and how it compares to their own experiences. So without further ado, please let me welcome Lisa Ling and our young panelists from both Northern and Southern California, Noelle, Isabella, Everett, and Zion. Thank you all for sharing your time, experiences, and expertise with us.
Thank you so much, Jen. I'm so happy to be with you. I apologize for the unattractive surroundings that I'm in, but as Jen mentioned, I am in quarantine. One of my crew members did not test positive, but my crew and I were exposed to someone, and so we're just trying to be responsible and quarantining for the requisite amount of time. But Jen and I have been talking about this issue for a long time because I have been so distressed by the powerful impact that technology, our devices, social media is having on our kids. As parents, it's loud and clear, but there's this pressure because so many kids are now in possession of what I call supercomputers with unlimited access to whatever they want to be able to access and whatever they don't even realize they can access. So when I saw the social dilemma, I was blown away. I was infuriated. I was devastated when I became aware of the control that a very few number of companies have on our minds, of our culture. And so it's become a mission of mine, of Jen Newsom in the California Partners Project, to try and raise awareness and figure out whether there's any way we can put this genie back in the bottle, or if we can't, what we can do about it, because we know that it's having an adverse impact on our culture. So with that, I'm so excited to talk to 4 teenagers who are joining us today, Noelle, Isabella, Everett, and Zion. And I want to ask you all, first of all, when you watch the film and you saw that our devices and the apps that we use are designed to keep us on them, that they are manipulating us to stay on. Did you realize this, and how did it make you feel when you learned this? Noelle, I'll start with you.
Well, first of all, it's obviously harmful being addicted to these apps, being addicted to these websites. But it's I didn't really realize it until I used TikTok or because I deeply apologize for that. There are there's a for you page that has controls what you see, and it basically uses an algorithm like it's uh, sorry, it uses an algorithm to see what you want to see, and it just keeps you on there for hours. You pass time. My screen time was insane, and you don't even realize it, and that's the really harmful part, in my opinion.
Isabella, what about you? When you saw the film and you saw the kind of control these companies really have over your minds, how did it affect you? How did you feel? And did it make you think about your own usage of this technology?
Definitely. I was already aware of the amount of like addictive power that these social media apps had. Even as my sisters got TikTok, I could see that even if they just let me like borrow their phone, I would be addicted to it like for hours on end, not being aware of how much I was on it. And then once I got my own Instagram, hours passed or until I realized how much time I had actually wasted. And it wasn't surprising because I had seen it in my own life and in my sibling and family's life. So it really wasn't a shock, but it was nice to know that everyone was experiencing the same thing as I was.
And when you say that, Isabella, that everyone was experiencing the same thing, what do you mean by that?
I mean, I think this is an issue that even adults, anyone who has these apps experiences. I think a lot of parents are trying to control like what their students and what their kids are seeing, where while not actually acknowledging that this is also an issue for them as they are experienced to these social media apps for the first time as well.
And Everett, how about you? Can you tell me about the reaction you had when you watched the film and when you found out about this manipulation? How did it make you feel?
So I'm the first child in my family. So unlike Isabella, I didn't see the impact that screens and technology had on people. I always assumed the purpose and the reason companies made them was to bring people closer together. The first time I really realized that wasn't true was back in maybe seventh and eighth grade when we would have sleepovers and everyone would just bring their devices. And instead of talking or doing anything like that, we would just act as if we weren't together. And that was really the first time I saw that maybe technology wasn't all just about bringing people closer together. Obviously, in quarantine, I think there are some good things about technology because we can connect with each other. But I was surprised by the film. I don't want to say I felt betrayed by the technology and the companies making them, but I was definitely surprised to learn that they didn't really have our best interests at heart. It was more about their success as companies.
And Zion, what about you? I mean, I think Everett so eloquently talked about just feeling betrayed, and I know when I watched it, I just felt so manipulated and angry. Tell me about how you felt when you watched it. Zion, Zion, can you hear me? Maybe we're having a little bit of a Zion, are you muted? Well, hopefully Zion will come back. Maybe I'll move over to Noel. Um, can you talk about how much you are on social media and how it makes you feel when you are on it? Particularly, for example, when you see your friends getting together and maybe they didn't call you or they're having the time of their lives. Like how do you feel when you're on social media?
That definitely impacted me in a big way because I would always see on TikTok, because I wasn't allowed to have social media at first. I had TikTok since it was Musically, and I would just spend hours on TikTok, and then I would be able to see my friends hanging out, but I wouldn't necessarily even I either wasn't invited or I wasn't able to go, and it was kind of difficult to see. It definitely contributes to the feeling of missing out and the feeling of just not being included, which is difficult to see and it's difficult to deal with, especially when these are your friends and you see them as your friends, but maybe they might not see you at the same way. But it's definitely difficult, and it kind of makes you feel really bad, which it's difficult to manage, especially at a young age when you're seeing all this and you're seeing other people hanging out, people you don't even know, and yeah, it's difficult.
And Noelle, when you feel really bad, what do you do?
I feel like with social media, there's nothing you really can do. Um, I guess talk to them, but I don't know that that necessarily always works. But you're just it's just kind of there on the screen, and you can just keep rewatching it, keep looking at it, and in the moment, there's nothing you can really do, which is it's difficult to see.
When you post things, how many times do you check to see how many likes you've gotten? And if you don't get a lot, what do you do and how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I've always been aware to not post pictures of my own face just because of like I know that it can influence the way that I think about myself. However, the things that I do post, I might check maybe a few times after I actually post it, and I'll try and see like how many likes it gets in comparison to like other that I might have, and then I do always like I might like look back because Instagram will give you notifications when someone likes your post and specifically who likes it. And as you scroll past the post, you can see like a username that you might follow and then the post that was liked. So I think that I revisit the posts quite a bit. Um, but really, I try to not focus on that too much because I know how much it can affect my well-being and how much it can affect like how I perceive my own self because I these comments you read them and then you can't unread them. You will know the opinions of others forever, and it's a choice to either look at them and to dwell on them or to just keep looking at them or ignore them.
And Everett, what about you? When you post things, do you get obsessive about checking how many likes you get? And how does that whole process make you feel if you don't get a lot of likes, for example?
So I mainly use Snapchat, and I remember back in like seventh grade, we used to text a lot, and then all my friends and everyone in my grade started getting social media, mainly using Snapchat to talk to each other. And so when I got it, I was happy because it meant I could communicate with them more easily. But then there was the thing about like posting on your story and things like that and seeing how many people were looking at them, if anyone would swipe up and give you a comment about it. And I just remember feeling a lot of pressure when doing something like that and making sure it was a good picture or video that I was posting. And since quarantine started, I really haven't done that much and not really at all. And to be honest, it's a lot nicer not worrying about the stress like that and just talking to people who I want to talk to and communicating with my friends instead of trying to make myself look good for everybody.
But do you sometimes feel like you're missing out if you're not as active because everyone else is, Everett?
Yeah, so that's another thing. That's kind of the downside to it when everyone else is posting things with people and you're seeing that and you're not, it can you can feel like you're missing out. And that's definitely one of the biggest problems. Um, and so I think so it goes both ways, because while posting can make you feel like you're in on whatever's going on, not posting and just communicating with your friends is really nice. So I wish it was where you could just post when you wanted to post, and you wouldn't feel like you were missing out on anything if you just didn't post and just wanted to talk to your friends. So I think that's one of the problems with it as well.
Zion, I'm going to try you again and hope that your audio is working now. I wonder, Zion, do you feel addicted to your device? Are you able to put it away for any length of time, or are you constantly? Do you feel like it's almost this compulsive and impulsive thing to reach for it constantly?
In some sense, I feel like there's a bit of me that feels the need to want to go on my phone and communicate with other people. But also, as a kid growing up, I wasn't really allowed to use my phone a lot. Like, it was only for like special occasions. So I don't feel like maybe I'm as drawn to it as other people are, but I definitely feel the need to
How
use
old
it.
were you, Zion? How old were you when you got that smartphone?
I have 14, I believe.
So that's pretty late, actually. You're right, because I hear of kids as young as 8 years old getting devices. So do you think because you got it later than other people, you didn't feel as addicted, or you haven't been as reliant as kids who got it earlier?
Yeah, I feel like I'm not like as connected to my phone as maybe other people are because I haven't had as much experience, and I don't have as many social media friends as I do real life friends because of that fact too.
Um, I really appreciate that, and I think your parents did a good job in in not giving it to you too young, because obviously that is I think the age at which a young person gets a device is really important. Noelle, do you have accounts that your parents don't know about? Do you think most of the kids that you know do? And are you someone who is really like, do you filter your pictures when you go on social media?
I am not a person that has accounts my parents don't know about it because with my parents, it seems like they just know everything. So I wouldn't be able to hide it very well if I did. But I do notice that a lot of my friends have accounts that their parents don't know about or apps that their parents don't know about that, um, and I see the way it affects them as well. They're constantly hiding things, and then even when they do have those accounts and they're not hiding it from their parents. The things they're posting, I feel like if their parents did regulate it and their parents knew about it, they wouldn't be posting the things that they're posting because a lot of things they're posting, their parents don't know about those accounts, so they're not appropriate. And that is very bad, I feel, and that's not something good to be putting out there. And that's something that wouldn't be put out without their parents. But yeah, I think that's pretty much. And sorry, can you repeat the second part of your question?
When you post things, do you filter them?
I'd say like I just add like a color filter if I want it to look better, enhance the lighting. But similar to Isabella, I stray away from posting like pictures of my face or of me because, like Isabella, I don't want that to alter my opinion on myself and how I perceive myself. So I would say I use filters, but I wouldn't necessarily use them on myself.
I suppose it was not fair for me to ask you specifically if you had any accounts your parents didn't know about. So um, I'll ask Isabella. Um, do a lot of people that you know have accounts that their parents don't know about it, and what kinds of things do they share on those accounts that they might not want their parents to know about?
Yeah, so I would say that people have multiple Instagram accounts. However, the content of those accounts might be specifically for their friends instead of for a larger network that they might have. So that might include like only their friends, whereas the other Instagram accounts might include their friends' parents or their other adults in their life. I don't think, I mean, I'm aware that people use those other accounts to post things that their parents wouldn't want them to post, but I'm not aware of any of my friends who do. Yeah. I mean, I don't have
And I
one
want
that
to,
my parent does have.
I want to ask all of you whether your digital life or the life that people can see on social media is different, very different from your real life. And how would you describe the difference between the life that you project and the life that you actually live? Zion?
I feel like me personally, um, like Isabella, I don't post myself a lot, so I don't really have that much of a different social media profile, I guess I could say. Like, I'm sort of the same person online as I am offline, in that sense, because I haven't really gotten myself attached to um, any sort of followers or any sort of friends on social media.
It sounds like all of you have pretty great habits with regard to social media. But Everett, can you kind of give me a sense? I mean, if do you think that most kids um, live differently on social media? Their social media lives don't necessarily reflect their real lives very much.
So personally, what I see people that I know posting, I don't see that as much, but like with maybe Instagram influencers and people like that, I can see that happening a lot more. Like people would just post like something that would resemble a perfect life, which I think is unhealthy for people looking at that because if they think that that's what their life is supposed to be like and they don't realize that that's just fake and it's for likes, then I think it can make them feel bad about their life. So no, I don't do that personally. I try to present myself online the same way I do in person, which is just me. But I think there are definitely people who do that, and it's bad for people watching to think that that's what their life is supposed to be like, if it's not.
Isabella, a little bit earlier, Everett said that when he takes a break from social media, he feels better. He feels like his mental health is stronger and better. Do you feel that way? And do you think that you could be capable of putting your device away or not using these apps for an extended period of time? Or how long do you think you'd be able to survive without social media?
Definitely. I think it would be possible for me to put my phone away. I would consider myself a newer Instagram user since I got it during quarantine. However, the effects are have been drastic in my everyday habits and how I use it. And I would definitely say that Instagram is the place where I spend the most time on my phone and have the most difficulty staying off of it. I think, and as a result, I've had to put like the time restrictions that you can put on like the Apple phones on like specific apps. However, if I were to make that goal and make and try and be off of the app for an extended period of time, I think I would have to delete the app from my phone or delete the account so then I could actually do that. If not, then I probably would just re-download Instagram after, I don't know, maybe like an hour, 5 hours, maybe a day. I think a day would be pushing it, to be honest. So uh, I know they had that
I hear
experiment.
you. Yeah. I hear you, Isabella. I mean, I'm kind of an Instagram junkie myself, and it is really, really hard. It's almost like just so compulsive. I see that like beautiful square, and on my phone. Like I like the colors are just so appealing. And Tim Kendall, I'm sure, will talk about how it was intentional, the choice of even those colors
Yes.
to attract you. But you said that the effect has been drastic. How do you think Instagram has affected your mental health, and how would you kind of describe your relationship with it?
Well, I think the app knows me a lot better than even sometimes I know myself. I might go on to the explore page and find stuff that I'm like interested that I didn't even know about. Like the app is like giving me information about things that I might be interested in, but then it's also leading me down its own path that it thinks I would like the best. Um, could you repeat the second part of the question?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just wondering, how you think Instagram has affected your mental health, because you said that
Mhm.
the effect has been really drastic.
Yeah, I think the amount of time I spend on my phone and on Instagram is the part where I see the most change. And I find myself wondering, where did I spend all these hours before I got this app? Where did the time, how did I use this time? I specifically on my mental health, I find that the longer I'm on Instagram and on my phone, I think just the way that I might feel about myself specifically as I compare my own life to whatever life I'm looking at on my phone, it draws the contrast between it, and I think really it points out where there are differences that like if you might see someone who's having fun or at a party, you realize, oh my, I haven't been to any parties or like, and especially during quarantine, it's not only is it hard to hang out with friends, it's also dangerous. You could be spreading a virus. And so I think you can really see the differences in maybe social groups and then how much fun others people might be having with their friends and how much fun you might be having, and you find yourself comparing even the time that you spend with your friends to other people's friend groups and social lives.
And Zion, what about you? When you're on social media, do you think that it's had an impact on your mental health?
I think to some degree it has, in terms of, I don't want to say my self confidence, but I definitely see like, I feel like a lot of times when people post things, they're sort of like looking for how many likes they get or how many people screenshot their story and things like that. So I feel like in terms of that, I wouldn't say like I'm like not confident, but I'd say that it definitely like it in terms of how I feel about projecting myself on social media, it definitely makes me think twice about that.
Um, One thing, I think that there are probably a lot of parents who are watching this and just so hungry to kind of really understand the impact that these supercomputers and these social media apps are having on their kids. Um, so I have to ask you all, do you think that social media has pushed the people to become more like reclusive and insulated, and because I get the sense that a lot of kids would rather spend time on these apps than even interacting with their friends if they could. I mean, I realize we're in quarantine right now, so it's difficult, but it just has that pull that they would prefer, right? They're pulled so hard to kind of just stay on these devices that they almost isolate themselves from the rest of the world and their friends. Everett, have you encountered this in your friend group?
Um, I would say thankfully not recently. This kind of goes back to what I said when I think we were younger. um, when we were younger, people had a draw to spend more time on their phones. I think because it was newer and it was cool to be on your phone and to post things. I think thankfully, like this year and last year, so really since starting high school, I think people have realized that being on your phone is not as good as being in person with your friends, and especially during quarantine, it's all anyone wants, but we're stuck with social media. And while that can be good, because you can interact with people, it can also make you feel worse about yourself, I think. So I'm grateful that, at least for the time being, I don't really see that in any of my friends. I think that we all understand that it's much better to be interacting with each other in person than on our devices. But I think I definitely have seen that, and it wasn't fun.
And Noelle, I'll ask you a similar question. I mean, have you um, noticed among friends of yours or people you know that they have just kind of turned inward? And I'm gonna be frank, because again, I think parents really need to hear these things. Do you know any teenagers or young people who have harmed themselves or even worse?
I truly have a lot of. I have a specific friend who, even she had a concussion and she wasn't able to get off her phone because she was so addicted to her phone. And with a concussion, you're not supposed to be exposed to blue light, anything like that. But she couldn't let go of her phone. She couldn't let go of her social media, and she has self harm issues and severe mental health issues, but she can't seem to give up social media, which I feel like is the root of a lot of those problems for her. Because I have noticed that she is very, I guess, obsessed with what she's posting and looking at what how her posts are doing, and like just very involved and obsessed with her social media and her posts, which is very hurtful to see one of my friends go through that. When I feel like it's obviously not an easy fix, but I feel like just deleting the app, deleting the accounts, like just doing a whole detox of social media can really help and benefit
And Isabella, what about you? I mean, do you know other teenagers who have harmed themselves or worse? And do you think that do you think that young people are even capable of putting it away or getting off social media? Because my sense is that there's a whole generation of people, and my generation included, that almost feels like we have to live our lives on social media because that's what we've all just been sort of driven to do. Um, Isabella, have you? I know that was a lot of questions, but can you kind of talk about the behavior that you've witnessed in other friends or teenagers, and have you ever seen any of them or known of any who have harmed themselves?
I a person who experiences issues in with my own mental health. I know that comparing yourself and other people is a big factor to how you perceive yourself in your own life. Um, but when we consider social media and the impacts that it has on our own lives, I think really that a big part would be in how we see ourselves physically and how we see and compare our own bodies with other bodies that are posted on social media. For example, students or kids who might be posting photos in their swimsuits, or like you might see someone who looks really skinny in their photos, and you might see yourself in the mirror and kind of recognize that contrast and the differences and feel hurt by that. And thankfully, I haven't known anyone who's physically hurt themselves because of these images, or um, uh, use self harm or have any eating disorders as a result of it. But I do see how people and students are changing the way that they're thinking as they compare their own bodies with other people's bodies, and how they might be more conscious about what they're putting in their bodies. And while it's good to be more conscious about it and like make sure you're eating healthy foods, of course, I think the real problem comes when you're trying to either like limit the amount of food you're eating, or maybe you're exercising, pushing your body to the brink where it's not even necessary. I think the most amount of harm that can come is in the way that you're thinking about your life and your own body.
I want to ask all of you one last question. The social dilemma really is about this control that a few companies have over our behavior, over our minds. And if you had an opportunity to talk to these developers, the heads of these companies, about the things that you have been experiencing, your own mental health and the mental health of your peers, what would you say to them? I'll start with Zion.
I would want to know if they thought that it's all worth it, because I feel like oftentimes developers and people who create these apps um, don't think about what it could cause for other people. And like you said, there are people who have, done self harm to themselves because of these apps and because of the lack of control of them. Um, so I'd ask any sort of developer, any person who's made an app similar to Snapchat or Instagram or TikTok, to just if they knew the side effects of what they were doing.
Noelle, what would you say if you had an opportunity to address app developers and the heads of these companies that are controlling our minds?
I'd just be curious if they have kids, how are their kids responding to these apps and these websites too? And if they aren't willing to change for me and kids like me who are experiencing these side effects of social media and websites, would they be willing to change it for their own kids? If obviously there's been a lot of issues with these websites and with social media, and nothing's been changed so far. So overall, I'm just curious if they would change it for their own children.
Everett, do you have a message that you want to send?
I'm more curious about, I remember the social dilemma talked about this too. They show us what we want to see. For example, the news, I was really shocked by the fact that not like the news we're getting isn't all the same. And that scares me because at that point, like what does the true news even matter if we're all seeing our own thing? So I would like to ask them if it's worth it to make all of us happy and keep us all on their apps by showing us what we want to see, if it's likely to cause conflict and just put the world in a worse place.
Yeah, certainly we are in the midst of chaos, really, and the most divisive period that I think in modern history for sure. Thank you for that, Everett. Isabella, in conclusion, is there a message that you want to send to app developers and the heads of these companies?
Yes, I would like to know what the makeup of the room looked like as they were drawing their plans for these apps. I think, like it was said in the social dilemma, their goal wasn't with the intention to have like child psychologists create these apps. It wasn't, the majority of the people who talked were men, and really there wasn't a lot of diversity. And I think that even though these apps are structurally have issues with them, I think that a greater set of opinions could also fix some of these problems by bringing in psychologists or just men and women of different backgrounds to create a product that would serve the whole world. I think that one of the biggest issues, like Everett was saying, is truth. Would they consider creating um, a separate regulations or section of these apps where only truth could be told, only news could be shared. I think that really, like Everett was saying, we don't all see the same news. We don't all see the same stats or the graphs or the same headlines. And I think this is one of the greatest influencers on social media to influence how we think about others, how we think about the political parties in our own nation. And what we see has such a great impact that I really hope that they know this and that they can better address how truth is shared, and how maybe fake news is shared so much faster and so much more than the truth is on these apps.
I think you make such a great point. Rather than hiring all these psychologists to figure out ways how to keep us on them and to addict us, why not hire psychologists to help us figure out how we can improve our mental health and be healthier mentally and spiritually. So Isabella, Noel, Everett, Zion, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and really sharing such candid, heartfelt thoughts about your own experiences with technology and social media. Thank you so much. Now it's time for the second part of our discussion about the impact of technology and social media on our own minds, but also on the minds of our kids, on the mental health of our kids. And I want to welcome back our first partner of the great state of California, Jen SIEBEL Newsom, who is hands down one of the hardest working people I know. She is just committed to equity and empathy, which has been reflected in her work as first partner and the many films that she's directed. She started the California Partners Project to shine a light on this issue of tech's impact on our kids' brains and mental health, because she's a mother of 4 children, but she also has just seen the disastrous impact that it's been having on kids and adults alike. I'm also so thrilled to welcome Tim KENDALL, formerly the president of Pinterest and director of ads at Facebook. He's now the CEO of Moment. Someone who has just been incredibly brave and vocal about how social media is literally, quote, killing people and causing them to kill themselves. He is also a father himself. Jen, Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Jen, first off, will you just tell us why you made this such a priority for the California's Partners Project, and also about the study that you commissioned about tech's impact on kids?
Thanks, Lisa. So such an honor to be here with you guys. Look, this is one of the most critical issues of our time. We're a nation more divided than ever. We're living not just in a physical health crisis currently, but a mental health crisis. I've seen my own addiction, right, to reading Twitter and Instagram. Fortunately, I've stayed off Facebook, but I've seen it, and I've seen it in my young children. During COVID in particular, when my 4-year-old was home from school, it was really hard managing 4 kids on Zoom, and these kids were exposed to things that they hadn't been exposed to before. My 4-year-old was, even just wanting to have the iPad to watch PBS the whole time. I have 2 kids with learning differences, and I think in some ways they're most vulnerable. One discovered TikTok through friends, and at first I was a little frightened, and then I saw that she was actually exercising and learning TikTok dances, and I thought that was cute. And then her 6-year-old sister started copying suit, and then I realized we had a problem. Our son somehow got his hands on video games that are not appropriate at all, and I saw that dopamine hit and his own, tension and the emotions and the drama and the aggression when you tried to pull him away from them. Even simple video games like Minecraft and Roblox. And so, but it's not just my own kids. I mean, as first partner with a focus on gender equity and healthy whole children, I saw it all around me. We go to restaurants. I mean, since I've moved back to California, you go to restaurants and you see a family next to you and the kids are on iPads or iPhones and no one's making eye contact. You spend time with friends' older kids, their teen kids, and these kids are literally with the phones in front of them, not in relationship, not connecting eye to eye, in community, building, human relationships. And so I knew that something was wrong. And that's why we launched the California Partners Project. And that's why we're conducting this study in partnership with Child Mind Institute, and to basically unveil and understand what is really going on for teens today, observing their sleep habits, their use habits, having them write entries into their diary daily for a week at a time to really understand what's going on, the impact on their attitudes, on their behaviors, and to really try and craft a way for us all to get out of this mess that we're in. And it really is a mess. And it doesn't just impact these kids, it impacts their families. And I'll just end on this one point. When you look at the research, and we've done research in partnership with Common Sense Media and Child Mind Institute, and you see the increase in anxiety, the increase in depression, the increase in suicidal ideation and suicide, especially amongst young people, not just 18 to 24 anymore, but you're seeing it in particular, girls of color, ages 10 to 14. This is not okay. It is not okay. And as first partner of California, we have a responsibility as the home of technology and entertainment. We have a responsibility, all of us, to do right by California's children and to do right by the world's children. And so it's, I think, incumbent upon us all to wake up, be woke to what's really going on, unveil the elephant in the room and have hard conversations with the media makers and tech manufacturers about what they can do better to right this wrong and create healthier media platforms for our world's children.
Thank you, Jen. And Tim, I also want to just thank you for your courage to stand up to the behemoths that are literally controlling our minds and our lives. Now, in the film, you mentioned that you practically allowed no screen time for your kids. So I imagine that was before the pandemic got rooted in America, because all of our kids now have to be on screens to get their education. But how are you dealing with that now? And what kind of advice can you offer to us parents who are really struggling with that, like knowing that our kids need to be on it, but how to convince them that staying on them is not healthy for them?
Yeah. God. I mean, it was such a hard problem before the pandemic, before quarantine, right? To help kids understand what they were doing and try to get them to change their behavior and to, give parents good ideas and guidance for how to do that. And now it feels, some days for me and my wife, it feels impossible. I think we often say desperate times require desperate measures, and it is a time of desperate measures when it comes to, giving kids devices and giving them screens so that we can all survive as people and as parents. So I think a lot of the rules and ideas and guidance, unfortunately, kind of goes out the window right now. But what I will say, and this is the guidance that we provide at Moment to parents before the pandemic, is that modeling as a parent is incredibly powerful. You heard in that prior panel with the teens, I think it was Isabella who talked about, I feel like adults are trying to control me, but they're not really looking at their own usage. And we see this a lot in that adults don't want to reckon with the fact that they have lost control over their phones. And that creates a real problem if you're trying to help your kid change their behavior. Kids watch what we do. They don't really always listen to what we say. It's fascinating if you look at some other domains where modeling is a powerful lever. If you look at bike helmets as an example, 80% of parents think bike helmets are essential. They're critical that kids wear them when they ride their bikes. Only about 25% of adults, when they ride their bikes, wear helmets. And so only 40% of kids wear bike helmets. If you look at seatbelts, it's a really different story, although it wasn't 70 years ago when seatbelts were actually controversial. But today, most people, 90 some odd percent, think it's really important that people wear seatbelts in the car. and the vast majority of adults wear seatbelts, and the vast majority of children wear seatbelts. And so I think that there's a really powerful lever in modeling that I would like to be a bigger part of the conversation. I don't think it's the only lever. I think there are other levers. I think dialogues and conversations and giving kids a vocabulary about the kinds of forces that are at play on their minds through these services and through these devices can be very powerful. But the part of the conversation that I don't think happens enough, and you certainly hear it when you talk to kids, and we heard it on the prior panel, is parents, what are you doing with your own usage? And that was actually how I got interested in this to begin with. I started looking at my own usage and I was ashamed of it. And I could see that it was when I was at my worst, I was not a very good dad, and I wasn't a very good partner to my wife. And it's amazing when you take control, when I have those moments that I do, those nights when I put my phone away or leave my phone in my car, how much more present I am with my kids and with my wife. I'm just a better person. I'm a better human being when I put that thing away. And it doesn't mean that there aren't great essential things that I use it for. I think it just means that moderating it and leaving it aside during really important times when I want to be present is a powerful, powerful thing.
We all are so concerned about the impact that social media is having on our kids, but modeling is so essential. And the truth of the matter is, when you really stop and think about our usage on social media, I mean, is there really a reason why we need to be on it, right? We have to, especially those of us who are now working from home, we have to be on screens more than we normally would be at home. But what, like, is there really a purpose to social media other than just making us feel really bad, right? And you talk about seatbelts, right? Seatbelts were imposed on us, right? They are a regulation. What would a seatbelt for social media even look like?
I want to be cautious that we don't confuse the fact that children don't always know what we're doing on our phones. And half the time, I know working moms and dual income households are not online. They're on social media. They're actually scheduling their kids or managing the calendar. And I do think that's important, because I do think that, my own husband, for example, doesn't quite understand everything that I carry as a working mother of multiple young children. And I think that we just have to be cautious not to put too much on parents' place, because they already are carrying too much, right? But with regards to the seatbelt, we need the tech industry to be leaders in the conscious capitalist or inclusive capitalist or moral capitalist movement. We need a triple bottom line value system where it's not just about profit, it's about people and the planet, where they're creating technologies that are leaving our society in a better place, that isn't dividing us, and that's actually contributing in a positive way to the social and emotional development of our children, future generations, all of us as human beings. And so that's where I lean into, and that's what I think is the responsibility of the tech industry and there's some great players. And Tim, I'm so grateful for your leadership in this realm, and Tristan Harris. And I think it really does require a real reshaping of leadership in the tech industry, and also those who are in leadership to dig deep and do the inner work, to look at how they've contributed to the higher anxiety, the higher depression, the suicidal ideation, the suicidal actuation, and the division that we're seeing in this country. And if they can do that and be a part of the change that they wish to see in the world, then God bless, because there are so many potential upsides to this connectivity that social media can provide us. But right now, I think the damage is much more harmful than the good.
Yeah, Jen, absolutely. I mean, I do think it's really important to draw the distinction between device usage and social media. I mean, I was talking specifically about really the purpose of social media and why even we as adults and parents feel the need to be on it. But the reality is we become addicted to it. It was intentional what has happened. So Tim, back to that question of a seatbelt. What could a seatbelt look like? And what would it take to prevent someone like me from feeling that compulsive feeling with regard to social media?
Yeah. Well, I think there's kind of a short-term seatbelt and a long-term seatbelt. I imagine the short-term seatbelt being, in the vein of us exploring Section 230, which basically, as it exists today, it really allows these social media companies to have any content on their platform and not be liable for the inaccuracy of that content, the incendiary nature of that content. And so they're able to, through that Section 230, sort of allow any content to propagate. And one of the great quotes from the film is that fake news, basically inaccurate information, inaccurate content, spreads 6 times faster than true content, than true news, than correct things. And so, but social media companies as it stands today are not liable for any of that. Now, it has been heartening. It's just the beginning to see these social media companies actually starting to draw some bright lines around the kind of incendiary content that is not okay and is clearly inciting hate, which is then leading to violence. So the seatbelt in the short term is they've got to start taking accountability for the impact of the kind of content that's on their platform. Now, my view is that the reason there's all this incendiary content and the reason that they let it go unchecked is that the business model doesn't incentivize them to moderate that content. The business model is about extracting as much of our attention as humanly possible every day. And the thing that's really scary about a Facebook having 3 billion users, half the world, is that they're running out of users. And when you're running out of users, the way you grow attention is you actually have to grow attention faster per person. And so they're going to have to get even more clever in terms of how they manipulate us and capture our attention. And so I think if you run this out, what you see is that this extractive attention economy driven business model, that is the issue. And so my view is that government needs to put pressure on these companies and consumers need to put pressure on these companies to change their business model. And this may have to look like, fossil fuel dependent companies, fossil fuel energy companies segueing over time to clean energy, right? And that was a function of regulation. That was also a function of consumer pressure. And it was also a function of government incentives. And so I guess if I had a magic wand, that seatbelt would be, hey, it wouldn't even necessarily need to be adversarial. It could be the tech leaders, governments all over the world, and consumers getting together and saying, hey, this model is broken. We didn't know it when we created it, but now we know it and we see the impact. Jen was talking about all the downstream impacts, which are catastrophic. And now that we know these, we know we need a different model. So government, how can you create the incentives? How do we create a plan to segue off of this attention-based extractive business model to one that looks after the consumer, to one that is aligned with the best interests of the consumer? Because right now, and you heard it on that team panel, the incentives of these social media companies are absolutely not aligned with my well-being. I think that on an earnings call, one of these attention-based economy leaders, they were asked about competition. And the leader said, oh, we don't really worry too much about corporate competition. Our competition is your sleep and your relationships. That epitomizes an extractive economy that is not aligned with your interests. If the way that they get big is if you sleep less and your relationships erode, or worse, all the examples that Jen noted.
So, I mean, we live in a country where the free market reigns, right? And that term regulations is really an anathema to business. So when we talk about imposing regulations, right? When we talk about legislation, what would that look like when it comes down to like the nuts and the bolts of the business? Tim?
I mean, I think it's going to be a tricky and wobbly transition, but you know, we've run this playbook before. We ran it with not particularly well, but we ran it with big tobacco. We're in the course of running it with big oil, and you know, there is a process of this being run with big sugar. We've got an diabetes epidemic because of big sugar, because of Coke, because of McDonald's. And now we've got this new thing, and it's called big social. And we have to figure out, I think we have to sort of sound the alarm, which is what we're really starting to feel this year, which is what I'm heartened by. But then we've got to figure out a way to transition these companies off this business model, and in a way that doesn't completely erode shareholder value, but also takes into account that, look, we're getting a lot of shareholder value in exchange for a lot of individual harm, and now increasingly a lot of societal harm. And I think there has to be a reckoning where we all say, the government says, the individuals say, look, no more. And what is the transition plan? And I think, you know, short term, I do think we need to look at Section 230. I testified in front of the House about this law, and that I think it needs to be looked at. And now all the CEOs are getting subpoenaed to testify at the end of October about in front of the Senate about this same law. And I think it needs to be re-explored.
Jen, do you have anything to add on that in terms of the role of government in trying to impose some kinds of regulations and to you know, ask these companies to have a conscience, really?
I mean, I always try to lean in with having a conscience and taking personal responsibility as leaders of these companies. And there's some great leaders in the tech industry, and I encourage them to keep standing up and speaking out, like Tim. I do think when it comes to regulation, we need federal regulation. I also just, gosh, there's, you know, news used to be a public good, right? And technology has divided us more than ever by not, you know, being factual and providing different information to each of us. And so I think the combination of what you've seen in the news media, and I'll just say with, say, Fox News providing infotainment and perpetuating mistruths, to, you know, Facebook doing a similar thing of only giving certain folks this information, giving other folks different information. I think at some point this news needs to be factual and regulated in that regard. And I'm not the policy expert here, but I do think that we are again in a crisis, and our country, our great democracy, is in peril because people do not have facts at their fingertips, and the division is very dangerous. And we have to do something about it now. It's urgent, and it's incumbent upon those in leadership, in particular at the federal level, and running these tech companies, to take that responsibility and to really think about American democracy.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most disturbing part of the film to me. I had no idea that these algorithms were, you know, feeding people different information depending on your browsing history or where you live, or you know, the demographic that you are part of, and almost isolating you from how everyone else thinks or how other people think. I mean, to me, that is, it was astounding. I mean, Tim, is there a way to change how these algorithms even work?
Absolutely. You don't, right now, these algorithms are being told, all right, Lisa spent an hour yesterday. Let's get her to spend an hour and 5 minutes tomorrow. And we just need to tell the algorithms not to maximize time spent for Lisa. But we can't do that. These companies can't do that unless they have a different model. And I think they can't do it unless they're tough enough. There's tough enough regulation and tough enough penalties. When I was at Facebook, and that was a long time ago, it was 10 years ago, the big issue, and it remained the issue for many years after I left, was privacy. In fact, all of the PR issues and all the issues du jour of Facebook for a long time was privacy. Data would leak. There'd be issues with people thinking that they had kept their data safe, but other people saw it. And basically, the FTC threatened Facebook for 5+ years with penalties, and they didn't do anything. And then finally, in 2019, they imposed a $5 billion fine and ongoing penalties beyond that for subsequent issues around privacy. And you don't hear about privacy issues with Facebook anymore because they buttoned it up, because they had the incentive to button up, because there were penalties associated with that. And like Jen, I'm not a policy person at all, but I do understand incentives really well. And I think there just has to be an incentive for them not to make you, through an algorithm, spend an extra 5 minutes on their platform tomorrow.
We have to wrap pretty soon, but I want to ask you both one question, and I'll ask Tim first, and Jen, after you answer the question, I'm just going to throw the program back to you because I know you want to you have some closing words. The question is for the average person watching this right now, for the average person sitting at home who is as aghast as we are at the power that these companies are able to exert over our livelihoods. What can we do? What can we do to help change things? Tim, I'll start with you, and then I'll toss it over to Jen.
Well, I think there are two issues at play. There's a lot of stuff happening at the individual level and at the family level, and then there are things happening at the societal level that are really serious and scary. We have the erosion of truth in my mind. And so I think at the societal level, I think individuals need to speak up. They need to vote consistent with their values around this issue. And, as it relates to the upcoming hearing in the Senate, they need to write or get in touch with their senator and make their views known. On the individual front, I think that we all need to get aligned that these services are completely addictive. They are a drug. There is clear data, causal links between depression, anxiety, and loneliness. And there's clear correlation between magnitude of usage and the thinning in the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is our executive function. It is where we exercise judgment. And in teens who use excessive amounts of social media, their prefrontal cortex is thinning. The other thing that they see correlated with too much usage is reduced gray matter in the primal part of our brain. That's the part of our brain that controls our impulses. That's the part of our brain that says, don't jump when we're thinking, oh, jump, or some sort of crazy impulsive thing. And so this is a really scary thing. By the way, you see that same gray matter reduction in cocaine addicts. This is a really serious health crisis. And I think that as more and more people get aligned on that and impose pressure on the government, and also are just, within reason, mindful of how much they and their families use the device, with the caveat that look, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's a desperate time, and I got to be careful with my modeling point that it doesn't come across as too self-righteous, because Jen is right. Like, we do a lot of our work and our jobs on our phone. I will say, just as a caveat to that, that one of the things that I do think can help a lot is just with your kids, in the conversation with your kids about using your phone, try to narrate a little bit about what you're doing. Hey, I'm working on this right now, as opposed to I'm scrolling Instagram or Twitter right now, because then it becomes clear that, hey, I'm on my phone and I'm actually doing high utility work versus something frivolous and numbing. And I think showing that distinction to our kids can be a really valuable thing to model to them.
Well, thank you, Tim. And Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you to close the program. Thank you so much, Tim. And thank you, Jen, for asking me to be part of this.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, of course. We love you. You're the best. Tim, thank you. Echo all those words. I just really quickly, before I do a quick summary and wrap this up, I do want to echo what Tim said and encourage everybody to watch the film and screen it with your family and have a conversation afterwards and really commit as a family to best practices with regards to technology. Remember, for those of us who are my generation, we grew up reading books and running around outside or dancing inside during COVID era, but we weren't in front of screens the way kids are now. And so there are other options. There are other things to do at home aside from spending however many hours of your day in front of a screen. I also I can't close the program without just reminding us that I think we also need to be thinking about the tech industry really needs to explore a shift in leadership in terms of who are the representatives on that corporate board. One of the things that we're doing out of the California Partners Project is supporting the work of the legislature and the governor for signing bills that require women and people of color to sit on corporate boards of public companies in California. And because we know that the greater the diversity and leadership, the greater the creativity, the productivity, and the better the bottom line. And we, study after study is indicating that especially when you have women and people of color with different perspectives at the tables of power, governance is stronger, that there's more of a commitment to, I would argue, relationship and bettering those in partnership with you. So you see in studies with women on corporate boards that they have greater partnerships with their local communities and the communities in which they operate. And you also see a commitment to family practices and creating products that actually don't harm children and families. So just something for everyone to be thinking about. If you're one of those women or individuals of color out there, I encourage you to advocate for yourself and make sure that you're in line to board positions, because that's if you're not in the C-suite already, it's a great place to have an impact on some of the media and tech companies that are, have been born and bred in California. And then, look, I just want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. This is incredible. This is the path. We know that the path we're on is not working for children or our families. For better or worse, media and tech are present. They're in our future. And I believe in my core that we need to call on those industries to harness all of their creativity and ingenuity to be a force for good, not just in our kids' lives, but in our lives. This conversation is too important to end right here. So with that, I just want to leave you all with some calls to action to keep the conversation going. Again, stay tuned for the California Partnership Project's report coming out in November on the state of our kids' mental health in relation to technology and media use. We want this to be an ongoing conversation when we need parents, teens, tweens, my kids' ages, grandparents, teachers, coaches, tech creators, and marketers, all of Californians to partner with us as we confront these problems in the months to come. We need to know, are our children all right? How can we help them be all right? And so please follow us or visit calpartnersproject.org to sign up and receive the report and stay involved with us as we are on this journey together. Second, we want to thank Exposure Labs and Moment and Tim Kendall for your incredible work. You can reboot your tech use with tips from Tim Kendall and others on how to reclaim your screen time and regain control by going on thesocialdilemma.com/take action. And third, be a part of the youth-led solution. Pitch your idea for how technology can remedy the harms felt by today's youth by applying for the Social Dilemma grant at www.lookup.live/dilemma competition. And by the way, youth, please, 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 take the power back into your own hands. Really find a way to talk about this with your peers and partner together, because you guys have so much more power than you probably know that you have. And finally, again, please share the social dilemma with your family, with your friends, with your neighborhood, with your work community. Head to their website to check out Tim's 3 tips for reducing your phone usage, plus more on hosting a screening and getting involved in the Impact campaign. We're in this together, folks. Thank you all for joining, and have a lovely evening.